Welcome back. Shortly after I published yesterday's video, the thing that normally happened, where Games Workshop reveal another new miniature, or 3, or 5 as they did yesterday in fact. So we're going to take a look at some new Stormcast Eternals. These are the Reclusians, and these are Stormcast who are like a few reforgings away from just losing themselves completely. Let's have a look at some tasty Reclusians, and I absolutely love this. I love it. There's only one thing I'm not fully on board with, and that is the collar. The collar with the big spikes. At a glance, like silhouette-wise, it reads a little bit Chaos. I think Chaos has just got such a monopoly on the whole spiky armour thing that if you were just glancing, I think you could be forgiven for thinking this is a heavily armoured Chaos unit. But then again, to be fair, it's a very similar thing to what Indrasta has going on behind her. She has a big high collar with a bunch of decoration on it, and it's clearly modelled after that. It's not a big deal, it's not a deal breaker, but it is just one of those things where I think if you are new to things, you might get a little bit confused at first look. That being said, that's pretty much the only complaint I have, and even then it's not a particularly big complaint, and if you wanted to chop them down, you could if you wanted to. Oh, where do we even start? The armour. The armour looks fantastic, right? I really, really like the armour. There's a little bit of additional kind of decoration, a bit of reinforcement here and there, kind of like gilded edges almost. There is a bit of fancy stuff going on with the belt buckle, but it's not like particularly in your face. It is a fairly busy model, but it's not, I don't think it's overly busy. And I think because of how clean the actual armour is itself, the armour is not like overly ornamented. There's a little bit of embellishment going on, but mostly it's just a big old suit of plate armour, which I think helps with it being not too like chaotic on the eye. Chaos is probably the wrong word given we were just talking about it looking a little bit chaosy if you're not familiar, but you know what I mean. The axe is fantastic, really like the axe. I do like the newer style of Stormcast weapons. They look really good. They look really brutal, which I really like. I like all the chainmail that's going on as well. Like that's a nice contrast to the actual armor itself. There is a little bit of the Space Marine pauldron going on with the shoulders, but I don't mind that necessarily. Part of it that's throwing me off is the blue. I don't know what it is, but for some reason I just found myself following the blue and really highlighting like the shape of those kind of chainmail pauldrons, and it just made me think Space Marine straight away. I don't know if it would be any different if it was painted black or just a different colour of cloth, or whether that's just something that it's going to look like no matter what, but I think that initial thing of that looks a bit Space Marine-y kind of falls away when you look at the fact the chainmail extends all the way down across the midriff and then down between the legs as well. It's just one of those things where it's initially like, hey, that's... oh no, it isn't after all. The shield looks great. I'm loving all of the paperwork. There's so many, like, long, scripture-like bits of paper going on. I love that. I love those details. It just makes it look... I don't know. There's, like, an added feeling of, like, religious fervour that comes with that specific like style of parchment being attached to stuff. I mean, it's probably just down from the fact that we've had purity seals for Space Marines for so long, and this is kind of echoing that. But yeah, I really like that detail. Also, the big old hefty chain. I don't know what that signifies. I don't know why they've got a big old hefty chain, like you'd see on an emo in the early 2000s, but I'm liking it. Also, the big old skull in the middle of the shield. Yes, love that. I really want to see the back of the cloak too, but I don't think we're going to get that view. I'd love to see it, because it feels like it's a good cloak. Stormcast, generally speaking, very good cloaks. I do like a good cloak. Something that is really fun about these Reclusians is that they come with another model. So they come with Memorians? Yeah, Memorians. I knew I got that right. Well, I didn't know I got that right. I was just hoping. But this is a really fun detail. So often direct descendants of the Stormcast Eternals themselves, they are an anchoring presence for the Reclusians, ensuring that the precious humanity that grounds them does not slip away in battle. Now, I think that's a really fun bit of background. I really like that addition, the idea that the Reclusians are not quite fully gone, but are so close to being fully gone that they need something there to keep them basically grounded in what they're doing, because otherwise, who knows what might happen. I really like that. It really kind of reinforces the fact that whilst being reforged is kind of a blessing from Sigmar, it's also quite a curse as well. It doesn't just make you into a sort of eternal warrior, it erodes what you are over time, and it really reinforces just how bad things must be for the Reclusians that they need this presence there to keep them on the straight and narrow. You know, I like that a lot. I really like the double axes on this lad. That looks really cool. I'm not entirely sure whether I like what's going on with the knee there. I think that's a bit too bulky / busy, but the rest of it looks really, really good. But then again, would do, because it's pretty much like the other one, just with 2 cool axes instead of 1 really big cool axe. The Memorian themselves, himself, herself, theirself, I can't tell. They look pretty good, but there is a bit too much like Chaos 40k cultist. You know, like the Dark Council, whatever it was called. Games Workshop did a few kind of mortal followers of Chaos for the Chaos Space Marines. There's a little bit of that going on with this one at least, which again I think blurs the line slightly. I think it's probably the helmet that's doing it for me. I think if there was just a hood, a big old billowy hood, that would take it down a different route. Like, it would just make it look a bit more like an acolyte as opposed to some sort of culty thing going on. I'm assuming that the idea behind that helmet, or like that sort of mask, is that it's kind of mirroring what the Stormcast Eternals themselves look like. So they have these helmets that are pretty much a head. I think that's probably what that is. It's like a kind of mortal image of what a Stormcast is. But I don't know, there's just something about it that isn't quite hitting the spot for me. But then again, I think, yeah, with like a bare head and a hood, that would absolutely hit the spot. That would be great. It would definitely also add a bit more to that kind of undertone of like zealotry as well, which, I don't know, I think that'll be a little bit of an improvement. And funnily enough, if I just clicked right, then I would have noticed that the other one has exactly what I'm after, and funnily enough, I think it does work better. I really do. I think it works better. The big old like brazier going on there with those similar kind of Halo-esque spikes, I do quite like it, but I would be very tempted to take those spikes off. Again, I think there's imagery there that, especially with the kind of hooded, cowled shape of the Memorian, it just has that little bit extra chaos feel to it, but nothing that couldn't be just, you know, snipped off, basically. I do think the poses could do with a little bit more variation. So this Reclusian here, I mean, it looks fantastic, especially with the added, what is it? Is it the surcoat that's going down over the leg there? That's a nice bit of added detail. I much prefer that added detail to the kind of specially shaped, molded, you know, knee pad on the other one. That, like, it's a really, really good model, but it is very similar to this one. There's not that much between them. The axe is held slightly higher up. The shield is borderline in the same position. It might actually be in the same position looking at it. And of course the stance is slightly wider. But overall, that's very similar. That's a very, very similar model to the other one. And I think a little more variety would have been nice. I mean, depending on how these are built, if you swapped out the arms with the 2 axes for the axe and shield on this one, that would make these two nowhere near as similar. So that's something that I think might be worth looking at. It depends on how they're built. I mean, they do look fairly... There's a lot going on. I don't know how much customization there will actually be for these, but that would be my... That would be what I'd be tempted to do. Overall, though, I love these. I think they look absolutely great. And the thing is, for the Stormcast, for the longest time, the thing I wanted more than anything for them was for them to just look a bit more grounded, look a little bit more, I guess, look a bit more grimdark, a bit more... Gothic isn't the right word. Just that bit more real. They don't obviously look real, but I think we've talked before, like, how the older Marks of Armour, there was a little bit, for me personally, a little bit of, like, World of Warcrafty stuff going on. I liked them, but I felt like everything could do with being just a little bit slimmer, a little bit less decorated, just a bit more approachable in terms of like a proper like grimdark fantasy setting, which of course Age of Sigmar isn't really that anymore, but that's my personal preferred aesthetic. And the Thunderstrike armour is like a perfect balance. I think it's a perfect balance. It's still got all the mad stuff. You've still got gigantic, unfeasibly big weapons. You've still got brutal looking swords and axes and hammers. You've still got like incredibly big old girthy, chunky lads and lasses like the Annihilators. But at the same time, whilst they are still very kind of over the top, they're very kind of stylized, they're not as stylized as the previous versions. They still fit in perfectly into AOS, but they have that more sort of grounded feel to them, which, I don't know, for me, absolutely perfect. And this is like, I feel like this is borderline the pinnacle of that. So yeah, there you go, the new Reclusians for the Stormcast Eternals. When are we going to see more rats? I want to see more rats. I'm not going to lie. I like seeing these. I really like seeing these. These are great. But I do want more rats. I want more rat men, and I want them now. So, let me know what you think of that like in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things. The usual stuff. Just, it's fine. I'll see you for the next one.